The new Mantis X10 firearms performance system has all the goodness of the original, plus holster draw analysis and recoil analysis. It's a fantastic upgrade and I recommend it highly.
Hey guys, Brian Hill with the Complete Combatant, and I've got your daily dry fire practice skill set for you. This is brought to you by Active Self-Protection Extra. You're watching the channel, you know that. And also Mantis X, we're going to be using their equipment today to measure our progress. Remember, if you don't measure things, you don't know if you're improving, and inversely, you don't know if you're getting worse. There's a hesitation to measure things, but if you measure it and then you work on it, you're going to see improvement eventually. If you measure it and you don't practice, you won't see any difference, you know. So you've got to practice, you've got to measure these things. You got to have drills that do that. One bit of advice that every new shooter always gets is, you know, don't yank the trigger. Okay, and there's a certain grain of truth in all this advice, but that may not necessarily be what you're seeing or what you're doing. What we need to do is try to eliminate everything else that goes around that and see if it is your trigger problem. Are you prepping the trigger appropriately? This is called the compressed trigger press. Mantis X, big mouthful, calls it the compressed surprise trigger press. I can barely say that one. The surprise is the stimulus. All right, you hear the beep and then you have to respond to it. In reaction times or in action times, there's three things we have. Action time is how long does it take you to do something. Reaction is how long does it take you to recognize you need to do something and then do it. And put those times together, you get response time. All right, so we're measuring having everything done in advance. We have a preparatory index with a good stance. Our hands are straight ahead. Our head's in position. The only thing we're doing is watching the sights and then pressing the trigger. Watching the sights, pressing the trigger. And that'll tell us what's going to happen. If we really pay attention, and here's where I find a lot of problems for shooters, new or pretty advanced shooters. I always ask them, what did you see? And sometimes they're like, I didn't see anything. Well, you're like a camera with a lens open, but you didn't press record. You're only going to improve things if you pay attention to yourself. This is the observatory. We're observing ourselves. Did I see it do that when I pressed the trigger? Or did I close my eyes and I didn't see anything? All right, we got to really get interested in what the sights are telling us, because sights and trigger always go together. They can't be separate. The sights tell us that we can shoot, and the trigger tells us how quickly we're going to be able to shoot inside that sight moving. So we need to pay attention to that. Got my VP9 here, my long slide VP9. I got a barrel disabler in it, so nothing can go in there. I've got a bunch of safety rounds in it, and this is the Mantis X on the bottom of it on a Picatinny rail in a magazine. I really like that. It's a great way to be able to practice from the holster. Pretty inexpensive. Okay. All right, so now we're all set. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my par timer that I have over here for you guys. Okay, and this par timer is going to tell me when I can go. All right, now I have tape on it so I don't disturb everybody. My dog thinks that par timer is playtime. I don't blame him. He gets really excited, so I put him outside so he can be as excited as he wants. What I do is I set this up with a delay. All right, and that means it's going to give me 3 or 4 seconds to get ready, and I want to be done pressing the trigger by the time the beep is done. Okay, not when it starts, not when it's echoing, but by the it's done. I want to be able to do that. The beep in this takes about 1/4 second. So I have 1/4 second to complete that. What I also want to do is really pay attention to what happened when I press that trigger. Did I see a big movement in the front sight? Just pay attention to it. Okay? So, hard to manipulate all this and talk to you guys. Do the best I can. So, I'm going to get a good stance. I'm going to get everything ready. Press the button, get my hand on the gun. Okay? A little press. Now, you guys saw it. The front dropped just a little bit. Okay? I was probably in time, but I dropped and dinked the front a little bit. So let's do another one. Okay. If you don't rack the slide, you don't get a sound. Let's do it again. Okay, that was pretty good. You know, I got a safety round, or the disabler in there, and it goes dink, so it lets me know when I'm done. Let's do one more. Okay. So I feel like I'm in a pretty good time, but that's personal observation, which we know human beings are flawed, and our anecdotal evidence isn't very good. So let's put it on a machine that can actually measure this. All right, that will be the Mantis X. So I've set it up with the compressed surprise trigger brake. All right, I've calibrated the gun in advance so you guys wouldn't have to watch me do that. And what happens here is I just press start and have the gun ready to go. We're going to do 5 shots with this. I want to get into 90s, and I want to try to get about a 1/4 second press on it. I notice there's a big difference between the Mantis and live fire, but that's okay. Now I know what the difference is, so I can still measure it. Okay, pretty good trigger press, not a lot of movement in it. Now I got to get ready again. Okay, pretty good. Okay, everything's looking good. Looking good so far. One more. All right. Carefully put it away. Okay, so pretty easy. I don't know if you guys can see that, but you know, my score was 92.9, which is in the 90s where I want to be, and my average time was 0.27. I had a couple of 0.25, 0.29, 0.23, 0.28, and 0.3. So we always train to the average. Don't tell me what your best score is. What a lot of people do is say, well, I had a 0.23, so that's who I am. I was only 0.23 once, okay? But I was 0.27 average the whole time. I want to train to the average. So make sure you do enough things in a row that you can average them, at least 10 shots. Now you can do this in live fire. Get a B8 like this, shoot 10 rounds off the buzzer. Okay, every time you hear the beep, you shoot 1 round. You're already aimed in. The goal is to get all 10 rounds in the 10 ring and get 100 points. Anything outside of that is 1 point down, 2 points, 3 points, or 10 points down if you miss the B8. Okay, and then it gives you an average. Okay, so I shot, I got what? 98. I do that at about 5 yards, and once that gets easier, you can do it further away. Now, more distance means smaller target, so we'll be looking at a longer time to press that trigger. That's the only time that time helps us a little bit. So get to 15 yards, you're going to see like a 0.4 or 0.5, somewhere in that area. You get to 25 yards, you're going to see 0.75 to 0.1, but you're already aimed in, so it shouldn't be real long for you. All right, try this drill, see if it helps you. It's very good to develop trigger discipline and how your trigger finger works, how you can move that effectively, and how to be ready in advance. What I see with a lot of shooters is they're simply not ready to go. I'll ask them online, are you ready to go? And they'll say they're ready, but they're thinking about something else. They wait for the buzzer to go off, and then they think in their head, oh, I need to do something, and now I need to go. And those are the guys that really hate speed work because they're adding so many extra steps that they can never do anything like in the time that they need to. So get everything done in advance. Get your stance down, get your grip down, get your sights aimed in, all right? And then press that trigger as clean as you can to the rear without much movement. I didn't say eliminate movement, but not much movement. You'll see a big improvement on that. And it'll tell you how well you can actually shoot under a bit of pressure. Remember, time and accuracy has to go together to create real pressure. And if I was fighting somebody and they were attacking me, they're going to be in motion. So I'm never going to have that perfect sight picture. So I want to have really good discipline and understand what is an acceptable sight picture in self-defense. That's good enough. I'm going to get it in this center area, or I'm going to hit that small target. Whatever I'm working on, I've got to find out what is the allowable amount of motion in that, not the elimination of motion. And you could do this drill really slow and get very high results, but Mantis has set it up really well. This is a great way to practice, and then you can keep a record and you can see how you're improving each time. Thanks a lot, guys. It's been a pleasure. My name is Brian Hill. I'm with the Complete Combatant. You can find us online, CompleteCombatant.com. Follow Active Self-Protection, model the videos. Start looking inside the videos for dry practice drills yourself. All right. When you see something that happens to somebody, did they have to turn? Did they have to make a harder shot? Was it a headshot? These are things that we want to practice in our dry practice as personal protection advocates, because those are the things that we'll be required to do. There is a time standard in all this, and you've got to work on it, but enjoy that. Remember, failure has to happen to you in order for you to get better. If you don't fail at things, there's simply nothing to do. And whenever I make a mistake, it's good because I instantly see an ability to correct myself. I run that videotape back in my head and say, here's what happened, and then I try something different until it corrects itself. All right? Oftentimes, the advice of slapping the trigger works instantly because it allows you to concentrate. That's what we really need you to do, is we need you to pay attention to what you're doing and see the sights as you press the trigger. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Hope everybody's doing well, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the range.